Imagine you're a lonely rancher who lost everything, living like a ghost in your own home for 3 years. That was me until I found two half-frozen orphans hiding in my tool shed during a Montana blizzard. I almost walked away. After all, I could barely take care of myself, let alone two children. But something in their eyes reminded me of the son I'd lost, and I couldn't just leave them to freeze. What happened next didn't just save their lives. It completely transformed mine. When they called me by a name I thought I'd never hear again, it broke down walls I'd built around my heart and showed me that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you lose. If you've ever felt broken beyond repair, this story will show you that love can find us in the most unexpected places. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Subscribe for more heartwarming true stories, and ring the bell because the ending will bring tears to your eyes. The December wind cut through the Montana territory like a blade, carrying snow that stung my face as I made my way to the tool shed behind my ranch house. At 45, I'd spent the better part of my life working this ranch, but the last 3 years had been nothing but going through the motions. My wife Martha and boy Thomas died of fever, leaving me alone with 300 head of cattle and memories that haunted every corner of this place. I pulled my coat tighter as I approached the shed. The door was slightly ajar, which struck me as odd since I always kept it latched tight. Probably just the wind, I muttered, though something in my gut told me otherwise. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The shed was darker than usual, shadows dancing where my tools hung on rusted nails. I was reaching for my hammer when I heard it, a soft whimper, barely audible over the wind outside. In the far corner, huddled behind a stack of feed sacks, were two small figures. Children, a girl and a smaller boy, wrapped in pieces of an old quilt, their faces pale as snow and their lips blue with cold. "Jesus Christ," I whispered, and the girl's eyes snapped open, brown eyes full of fear and exhaustion. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with dark hair tangled and matted. The boy beside her looked younger, maybe 6, his face buried against her shoulder as she held him protectively. "Please don't hurt us, mister," the girl whispered. "We ain't stealing nothin'. We was just trying to get warm." Part of me wanted to turn around and pretend I'd never seen them. Life was complicated enough without taking on someone else's problems. But the boy lifted his head then, and I saw eyes that reminded me painfully of my own Thomas. Blue eyes in a face so thin it looked like he hadn't eaten in days. "Where'd you come from?" I asked. "Billings," she said. "Our ma and pa died of the sickness last month. The church folks was going to send us to an orphanage back east, but we heard them talking about how they split up brothers and sisters. Billy's all I got left in this world, so they'd run. 2 children, in the middle of winter, walking who knows how many miles." The boy, Billy, started coughing then, a harsh sound that echoed off the shed walls. When he pulled his hand away from his mouth, I could see flecks of blood. "What's your name?" I asked the girl. "Emma Sullivan. This here's my brother, Billy." I couldn't just walk away from a sick child, no matter how much I wanted to avoid complications. "Well, Emma Sullivan," I said, extending my hand, "you can't stay out here. This cold'll kill you both before sunrise." The relief that flooded her face was painful to see. Without hesitation, I scooped Billy up in my arms. He weighed almost nothing, just skin and bones wrapped in tattered clothes. The walk to the house felt longer than usual, fighting against the wind. When we reached the warmth of the kitchen, I could feel Billy shivering against my chest. I laid him on the old sofa and built up the fire until flames roared high and warm. "When's the last time you two ate?" I asked. "Yesterday morning," Emma said quietly. "We found some berries. I brought them bread, preserves, and milk." Emma ate like she was afraid it might disappear, but saved half for her brother. Billy could barely hold the cup, so I supported it while he took careful sips. As they warmed up, I really looked at them for the first time. Siblings, obviously, the same dark hair, the same determined jaw. But Billy's gentleness reminded me so much of Thomas it made my chest ache. "How far did you walk?" "Near on 2 weeks," Emma said. "Slept rough most nights. 2 weeks. In December. In Montana Territory. It was a miracle they were alive." "Well," I said finally, "storm's getting worse. You'll stay here tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. We ain't charity cases, mister. If you let us stay, we'll work for our keep. Name's Sam McGrath. And we'll talk about work tomorrow." Billy had fallen asleep on the sofa, his breathing labored but peaceful. I carried him upstairs to the room that had once been Thomas's, Emma following. As I tucked them both into the bed, Billy's eyes fluttered open. "Thank you," he whispered. "Mr. Sam?" Emma's voice stopped me at the door. "Why are you helping us?" I stood there, not sure how to answer. Maybe it was because they reminded me of everything I'd lost. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in 3 years, this empty house felt like it had purpose again. "Get some sleep," I said instead of answering. I woke before dawn to the sound of coughing from down the hall. Billy's condition had worsened. During the night, by the time I dressed and checked on them, Emma was sitting on the bed's edge with her hand on Billy's forehead. "He's burning up," she said, fear in her voice. The boy was burning with fever, his breathing shallow and quick. "We need to get the doctor," I said. "Ain't got money for no doctor," Emma said quietly. "I do." The words came out before I'd really thought about them. The ride to Clearwater took 2 hours through falling snow. Doc Peterson was surprised to see me. I hadn't been to town in months. When I explained about the sick boy, he immediately grabbed his bag. Back at the ranch, Doc examined Billy while Emma and I waited downstairs. "Boy's got pneumonia," he said when he emerged. "With proper care and medicine, he should pull through. But it'll be touch and go for a few days." He left medicine and instructions refusing payment. "Consider it my Christmas gift. Those children are lucky they found you." Over the next few days, I found myself settling into routines I hadn't experienced in years. Making breakfast for 3 instead of 1. Checking on Billy every few hours. Listening to Emma tell stories to keep her brother entertained. That Emma was remarkably capable for an 8-year-old. She helped with cooking, cleaned without being asked, and never complained. On Christmas Eve, Billy was finally strong enough to sit up and eat solid food. "We ain't got no presents," Emma said that evening as we sat by the fire. "But Ma always said Christmas ain't about presents anyway. It's about being grateful for what you got." I remembered the wooden horse I'd carved for Thomas the Christmas before he died. I went upstairs and retrieved it, along with the small doll that had belonged to Martha. When I returned, both children's eyes went wide. "These belonged to ... I started, then stopped. "These are for you, if you want them." Emma took the doll with reverent hands. Billy examined the horse, running his fingers over the carved mane. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Thank you, Sam." Before I could react, Emma threw her arms around my neck in a fierce hug. It had been so long since anyone had hugged me that I'd forgotten what it felt like that Christmas morning. I woke to the smell of coffee and pancakes. Emma was at the stove, making breakfast with supplies I hadn't even known I had. "Merry Christmas, Sam," she said with a smile that transformed her serious face. That afternoon, Billy was strong enough to walk outside. He was fascinated by the horses, and I found myself telling him their names, their personalities, the way. Thomas used to listen. "That one's Bella," I said, pointing to a gentle Mare. "She was Thomas's favorite. Was Thomas your boy?" Billy asked. Yeah? He was about your age when he got sick. Billy nodded solemnly, then looked up at me with those blue eyes. I'm sorry he died, Sam, but I bet he'd be happy you found us. The simple wisdom nearly undid me. I knelt down to Billy's eye level. You know what, son? I think you're right. That evening, Emma looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Sam, what's going to happen to us? It was the question I'd been dreading. I looked at these two children who had somehow become part of my life in just a week. Well, I said slowly, this is a big ranch. Always plenty of work to be done. Figure I could use some help. You mean, you want us to stay? For real? If you want to. If you think you could be happy here. We don't want to be no burden, Emma said. You're not a burden. You're family. If you want to be. The word hung in the air, family. It was a word I'd thought I'd never use again. Yes, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, we want to be family. Billy struggled to his feet and wrapped his arms around my waist. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for saving us. I held him close, this boy who reminded me so much of the son I'd lost, and felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Spring brought calving season, the busiest time of year. Emma insisted on helping despite my warnings about the hard work and difficult losses that sometimes came with birthing cattle. I ain't afraid of hard work, she declared. And I ain't afraid of death neither. Already seen enough of it. Billy, stronger now, but still not up to heavy labor, appointed himself my assistant. He carried supplies and kept careful count of new calves in a notebook I'd given him. The crisis came on a stormy night in late April. A young heifer was having her first calf, and nothing was going right. I'd been working with her for hours when Emma appeared at the barn door. Thought you might need help, she said simply. Together, we managed to turn the calf and deliver it safely. As we cleaned up in the dawn light, Emma looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Good team, ain't we? She said, double quotes. Yeah, we are. By summer, our routines were well established. Emma had taken over most household management, planning meals and keeping house better than I'd ever managed alone. Billy followed me everywhere, absorbing everything about ranching with enthusiasm that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this land. The children had grown in ways beyond just physical. Emma's reading had improved dramatically with the books I'd found in storage. Billy could rope a calf almost as well as I could. But more than skills, they'd grown in confidence, in security, in the knowledge that they belonged somewhere. One morning in late summer, Billy made an announcement that caught me completely off guard. I've been thinking about what to call you, he said seriously over breakfast. What to call me? Well, Sam seems too ... I don't know. Too much like we ain't family. Emma nodded. We've been talking about it. You've been more than just Sam to us. Billy looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. Then he looked back at me with those blue eyes that had become so dear to me. Could we ... Could we call you Pa? The question hit me like a physical blow. The title I'd thought I'd never hear again, offered by a boy who wasn't mine by blood, but had somehow become mine in every way that mattered. You don't have to, Emma said quickly. We know you had a real son. No, I said, my voice rough with emotion. You're not replacing anyone. You're making what was here bigger, better. So ... is that a yes? Billy asked hopefully. I looked at these two children who had wandered into my life and changed everything. Emma, fierce and protective and wise beyond her years. Billy, gentle and curious and brave, despite everything he'd been through. Yes, I said. I'd be honored if you called me Pa. The smile that spread across Billy's face was brighter than the sunrise outside. Emma's eyes filled with happy tears. Pa, Billy said, testing the word. Pa, can you teach me to rope cattle? Today? Pa, Emma said, I think we need to plant a bigger garden next year. And just like that, I wasn't Sam McGrath, the lonely rancher anymore. I was Pia to two children who had chosen me just as surely as I had chosen them. A year passed in contentment I'd forgotten could exist. But our peaceful life was threatened when a stranger in a city suit rode up to our house one September morning. Samuel McGrath? I'm John Mitchell from the Territorial Child Welfare Office. I'm here about the Sullivan children. My blood ran cold. I'd always feared this day might come. These children should be in an official orphanage, Mitchell explained. Once inside, you're a single man with no legal guardianship. I have authorization to take them into territorial custody today. No, I said firmly. These children are happy here. They're healthy. They're learning. They're loved. Legally, they're not yours. I have a wagon waiting. I heard the barn door slam outside. In moments, Emma and Billy would walk through that door and their world would end. What do I have to do to keep them? Legally? Mitchell looked surprised. You'd need to file for adoption through territorial court, but the process takes months. The kitchen door opened and Emma walked in with Billy. When she saw the stranger, her face immediately grew wary. Pa? Who's this? Mitchell's eyebrows raised at the word Pa. I knelt to their eye level. Emma, Billy, I need you to pack some clothes. Just for a few days while I take care of some paperwork. What kind of paperwork? Billy asked, tears forming. Adoption papers. I'm going to adopt you both, legally. So, no one can ever take you away again. Mr. McGrath, I can't delay this removal. Mitchell began. Then I'll file an emergency injunction. Judge Morrison in Clearwater. After tense negotiations, Mitchell agreed to give me 48 hours to file papers. That night, I rode through darkness to Clearwater. Judge Morrison, an old family friend, agreed to open court early and granted an emergency injunction. More importantly, he fast-tracked our adoption case. When I returned home, Emma and Billy were waiting on the porch with packed bags, ready to run if needed. It's okay, I called as I rode up. You're staying. We're staying together. The adoption hearing was held on a crisp October morning. Character witnesses testified about our family, about how the children had thrived. When Judge Morrison asked why I wanted to adopt them, I spoke from my heart. Your Honor, 2 years ago, I was barely living. I'd lost my wife and son and was just existing. Then these children showed up in my shed, freezing and frightened and brave beyond their years. They didn't just find shelter. They brought my home back to life. I looked at Emma and Billy beside me. They gave me purpose again, a reason to care about tomorrow. We're already a family. This just makes the law recognize what's already true in our hearts. Do you children want Mr. McGrath to adopt you? The judge asked. Yes, sir, Emma said firmly. More than anything. He's the best pay anyone could ask for, Billy added. Judge Morrison smiled. In that case, I hereby grant the petition for adoption. Emma and Billy Sullivan are now legally Emma and Billy McGrath. The gavel came down with a sound that echoed through my entire life. Emma burst into happy tears. Billy threw his arms around my neck. And I felt something settle in my chest, some final piece of healing I hadn't known was missing. That evening, we celebrated with a special dinner Emma had planned. As we sat around our family table, Billy looked at me with those blue eyes that had become so dear. Pa, are you happy we found you in that shed? I looked around at our home, filled with laughter and purpose and love. At Emma, who'd grown from a frightened 8-year-old into a capable young woman. At Billy, whose gentle wisdom never ceased to amaze me. Son, I said, that was the best day of my life. Finding you two freezing in my shed was the moment my real life began. Ours, too, Emma said, squeezing my hand. Outside, the Montana wind still howled across the prairie, but inside our house, everything was exactly as it should be. We were the McGrath family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, by understanding that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than any other kind. When Billy smiled and said, "I love you, Pa," with simple honesty only children possess, I knew that 2 orphans freezing in a shed had indeed saved a lonely rancher's life, just as surely as he had saved theirs.